Let's start with the city of Bell. When does a city employee earn too much? I'll tell you when we reach it. I want a raise. You hear me, city of Los Angeles?
You hear me, mayor who's never heard of me?
You will, when I have your job.
This is my portfolio.
I'm submitting this as evidence for why I should be mayor.
Exhibit A, my whole life.
Exhibit B, my fist. So let's begin this tale when all stories of local corruption begin, the year 500 BC.
Oh, Jesus.
Before crime. That was when the first Keech natives settled in the area that I'm talking about, which is a 2.6 square mile area 10 miles southeast of downtown Los Angeles. They were doing just fine for hundreds of years until the Spanish came and decided they could do it better. So that was the end of them. Between 1810 and 1813, this 30,000 acre area was settled by Don Antonio Maria Lugo of the famous Lugo family that our friend from the alcohol episode, William Wolfskill, married into.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. Alcohol. I said it.
I
I
said
need
it.
some of it.
I just gotta. No one arrest me.
Alcohol. The full moon to my Wolfman status.
By 1838, this land was my land, and this land was officially granted to Lugo as Rancho San Antonio, who had set up their home at what is now the southwest corner of Gage and Garfield.
Okay. I like alliteration, and I know where that's at.
I think we're talking about Cajun Garfield.
You love the lasagna.
Crawdad lasagna.
Insane gators.
Garfield. Going on Garfield. I hate Monday.
Every other damn day of the week.
I'm gonna sip Odie right down the bayou. Cajun Garfield. Anyway, so that's where the Lugos were living. 2017 off to a
Fantastic start.
A very logical start.
We're all going to live in New Orleans, where Trump can't get us.
Because it's underwater, and he's afraid of that. They were living there, but the Lugos slowly lost their fortune, and by 1865, most of their land had been sold off for less than $1 an acre. Could have been ours.
Yep. If only we were born and had $1.
Between 1870 and 1890, the area was further subdivided. In 1876, a guy named James George Bell bought 36 acres and built what he called the Bell House, which is just the house of bells. Not
It was very loud.
every hour on the hour, he would hit his wife.
Okay.
Gong. Bell has LA connections coming out the Bell House. Get this.
A bell for every connection.
He's got bells in the belfry. After his wife Dolly died, goodbye Dolly, he remarried into another big LA family by putting a ring on the finger of Susan Alba or Abla. I wrote Abla, it might be Alba. Susan Hollenbeck.
Oh.
Of the Hollenbecks. His daughter went on to put a ring on the finger of Earl Gilmore, founder of the Gilmore Oil Company in Gilmore Field from our baseball episode.
Oh, right, okay.
The Happy Gilmores.
Happy Gilmore Girls.
So he also helped found Occidental College, and he and his son are responsible for developing the area right across the river from Bell Gardens.
Oh, right.
I'm assuming they had a hand in Bellflower also, and what may be a shock to you like it was to me, but probably shouldn't have been, Bel Air.
Oh. Why did they get rid of the other L in Bell?
Rent is high. It was mostly a farming community. Bell, not Bel Air.
Yeah.
Probably Bel Air, but Bell.
Farming assholes. Hey, am I right, buddy? Oh, no, I didn't like that very much. That was a curse word. I shouldn't have done that.
So it was mostly a farming community through the end of the 1800s and early 1900s, but on September 7, 1927, the city of Bell held a vote on whether or not to join the city of Los Angeles. And of the population, less than 7,500 people, 1,518 voted in favor of joining LA, winning by 33 votes. Low voter turnout is going to be a theme in the city of Bell. A proud tradition. On their seal, it's an empty polling place.
It's someone staying home.
With his head in the sand. They won by 33 votes, and on November 7th, 1927, they incorporated into the city of LA. After World War II, the area lost touch with its farmers and became more suburbanized, and up until the story I'm about to tell, it was really only famous for having 55 Oscar statuettes stolen from a shipping company there in the year 2000. That was their claim to fame.
I kind of remember that happening.
Yeah. Well, don't worry, because 52 of them were recovered after it was announced that the awards in the 52 categories for holding trash was given to Local Dumpster.
Local Dumpster won?
52 times. It was its days, Lord of the Rings.
He got as many Oscars as there are cards in a deck.
He got as many Oscars as people vote in Bell. 52 Oscar pickup.
You want them, you got to pick them up. You got to grab them.
After World War II, the city of Bell began a slow and steady decline as the Cold War set in and the local factories that powered World War II began to close. The Industrial Post, which was the local paper since 1924, stopped printing in the early 90s. The California Bell Club, which was California's largest poker parlor that took in $2 million a year for the city of Bell, they shut down in 1993. The city was on the verge of bankruptcy and was in a serious state of decay in the early 90s. Enter one Robert Rizzo.
I love that name. I love alliteration. I've stated that already.
R-R-double-Z. I like it. I like it.
Hey, Mike!
He was a graduate from UC Berkeley and Cal State East Bay, which had to have been made up, with a master's in public administration. He went on to become the city manager of Hesperia, but in 1993, he left his job amid accusations of embezzling city funds.
Not Rizzo.
And came down to Bell to become the new interim chief administrative officer.
They'll never have heard of that like 20-something miles away, right?
They can't transmit over those mountains. The officials of Bell were willing to look past this corruption because they were desperate and their city was about to collapse. So what they weren't willing to look past was his stomach, because it was so huge, and they gave him nicknames behind his back like Fatso and the Penguin.
Standards? It's penguins.
It's pretty funny and accurate.
Yeah.
He did not lie. It did not make him feel good.
No, it's not supposed to.
That's a term of endearment. I've been calling you Fatso Penguin all the time. Don't feel too bad for him just yet, though. Decide if it's mean at the end.
You should have started with the bad stuff instead of making fun of his
No, this
weight.
guy came in and he was so big.
I couldn't believe it.
And they sent him to jail. I mean, that was the corruption of Bell.
And I'm the bad guy for making fun of his weight?
But Rizzo stormed into the city and he went straight to work cutting every corner he could find. Everything from layoffs, making the Bell government run on just 80 employees, to cheaper streetlights and keeping city equipment in use until it could not be used anymore. He trimmed all the fat in the city except for his own, as we can assume his co-workers would say, and he saved the city. So he added a mini golf course, a recreation fields, and built up a general fund of $15 million. But there was always something strange about Rizzo.
What was it, perhaps?
2 Z's in a name, can't be trusted.
Did he live in the sewer and fight Batman?
What do you know?
Oswald Cobblepot. Go on.
So for one thing, he never hung up any decorations in his office because, as he said, when you put things up, you're telling people you're comfortable. I want people to know I can leave at a moment's notice.
Wow. Val got a stepdad.
Wah, wah, wah.
Wah, wah, wah.
A corrupt stepdad from Hesperia, like they all come from.
I'm not ready for a commitment.
You're not my real city. I
I'm
don't have to support you.
just here till Hesperia takes me back.
Can I have your lunch money?
And also your lunch.
Which is money. I gave you that money to eat for lunch. It wasn't exactly that warm welcome Bell's so renowned for. So the city was brought back from the brink, but it wasn't exactly Rizzo's paradise.
Yeah.
The population at the time was around 35 to 40,000, about 90% Latino with a large Lebanese community.
That's interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah, the Lebanese community will come back into it later. You'll see.
You'll see.
You'll see. They'll bounce back. 53% of the community was foreign born, but the average income was $28,000. That was about half the average in the entire country.
That's not well. No, that's bad, huh?
Well, I mean, it's about what we make, but we don't make
do
a lot
well.
of money.
We're not also not doing well, yeah.
We do live in Bell. Did you forget?
I sort of was trying to distract myself from it, yeah.
Has anyone not put together that we're from Lebanon? Our accents must have thrown people off.
They're just so
Similar. The Lebanese accent is so similar to the sunshine beachy accent that we're known for.
to these Valley Girl accents that we've adopted.
Like salam. 17% of the community was living below the poverty line and 16% were unemployed. But why were things going so poorly for the citizens of a city being run by such a penguin prodigy? Around 2010, Maywood, the city just north of Bell, was having their own financial troubles and couldn't manage to get proper insurance, so they had to fire most of their government employees and disbanded their police department. So seeing an opportunity, Bell then took over operation of Maywood.
Really? You could do that?
It was like a power grab, and they merged their police forces into what would have become known as the Rancho San Antonio Police Authority, and this was just phase one of Rizzo's plan to launch an entirely separate Southeast LA police force. Like there would be like sheriff, LAPD, and then Rizzo's Einsatzgruppen.
That sounds really scary.
It's never a good thing when a local city governor gets his own police force. They're just here for my protection, and I need protection from the Lebanese and the Latinos
And the LAPD.
I'm going to war with sheriff.
Call me Sheriff Mayor.
Police chief sheriff.
Sheriff Penguin, go ahead.
The local police, though, were against this, and they tipped off the LA Times of what was going on. So a couple reporters from the LA Times named Jeff Gottlieb and Ruben Vivas started working on a story about the merger of Bell and Maywood, but as they started digging, they noticed something strange.
Odd.
They were also getting help from a Bell-based blogger from the website WatchOurCity.com who went by the codename Pedro Paramo and would later speak in public wearing a luchador mask out of fear of retribution for what he had done.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. Paramo had been calling foul on the things going on in Bell for years, but nobody listened because why would you listen to the luchador masked guy from WatchOurCity.com?
Because they fought monsters in the 60s. That's why.
He knows what he's talking about.
Of course he would fight the penguin.
He killed El Guadalupe. Yeah, El Pingüino. Ay, caramba. So with these tips and their own research, the LA Times guys decided to refocus their story on one particular aspect of Bell that they noticed: the salaries of the officials.
Oh, odd.
Normally in a city the size of Bell, the local council members would make about $400 a month or like $4,800 a year because it's really just a slightly compensated volunteer position in a place like that. But how peculiar. In Bell, the council members were making almost $100,000 a year. Odd. Then they saw the salary of Rizzo's assistant city manager, Angela Spaccia, or Spacchia.
I would overpronounce it.
Spacchia.
That's it, yeah.
She was making $376,288 a year. How queer. Then they
just say odd.
Then they queer. Then they turned their attention to the police chief, Randy Adams. Adams had worked in the police departments in Simi Valley and Ventura, but immediately before getting hired by Bell in July of 2009, he had retired as police chief of Glendale. Now, LAPD police chief at the time, Charlie Beck, oversaw a department of 12,899 people, and he was earning $307,000 a year. That's Charlie Beck. Bell police chief Adams oversaw a department of 46 people, and he was making $457,000 a year.
Oh my God.
Then they looked towards the manager of this city with such strange salaries, Robert Rizzo.
Surely not him.
At this time, California Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger was making $173,987 a year, a salary which he didn't accept because he was living off Predator residuals. LA Mayor Antonio Villaraigosa was making $232,425 a year. The city manager a little to the west in overpaid Manhattan Beach was making $257,484 a year. The chief executive of LA County was making $338,458 a year. President Barack Obama of the United States of America was making $400,000 a year for running the United States of America.
Right.
For running the city of Bell, population just under 40,000, Robert Rizzo was making $787,637 a year.
Wow, like nobody would notice.
It's believed that they were the highest paid officials in the entire country.
Oh, boy.
How deliciously, delightfully, queerly, odd, strange, and weird. So the LA Times broke this story on July 15th, 2010 in an article called "Is a City Manager Worth $800,000?"
Yeesh, just in the title, you're in trouble.
It took a lot of digging and a lot of resistance from the city of Bell to release their records, but slowly the story of how these salaries got to be so high started to come to light. These people didn't start out making these high of salaries. That'd be too easy. That'd be way too obvious. When
Yeah,
Rizzo
they do it.
first started in the 90s, he was only making $72,000 a year, but he started writing his own employment contracts without the approval of the council, and in these contracts, he would give himself a higher salary and set up that he would receive a 12% raise every July. So in 2002, his salary was $250,000. By 2004, he was making $300,000 a year. The next year, he was making $442,000 a year. By the time the story broke, his last raise had been $84,389.76. But his assistant, Spacchia, also had similar clauses in her contract. When she was hired July 1st, 2003, she was making a still way too high $102,310.
For an assistant, yeah.
1 year later, she was making $130,000, and when the story broke, she was making over $376,000. Like I said, Spacchia worked with Rizzo in obscuring the wording in these contracts by not specifying exactly how long a pay period was in them, so that anyone who might have seen them wouldn't be able to add up their salary. But it wasn't just the salary that was the problem. It was the benefits that went with it. Rizzo had access to taking loans out of the city's fund whenever he wanted to. So throughout his time there, he loaned out nearly $2 million to himself to pay off money he owed, to himself for doing what he saw to be a good job, and to about a dozen others, including Spacchia, who got about $350,000 of these to bribe and entrap them to go along with all of this. Rizzo even had a law firm called Brown, White, and Newhouse working for Bell from 2005 to 2010, who made a lot of money during that time. But when Rizzo hired hired them in March 2010 to defend him when he was charged with driving under the influence. This was a clear conflict of interest, and who knows what other inside deals he might have been doing between the city and that law firm. Weird side note, apparently for a little bit, Rizzo was working as a parking lot guard at the International Surfing Museum in Huntington Beach as part of his community service.
Could you imagine?
Cowabunga. Wah, wah, wah. Then there was the paid time off. Between the time she was hired and the time the story broke, which was 2003 to 2010, Spaccia had taken a total of a year and a half off and still got full pay the entire time.
Oof.
And this wasn't even vacation or sick time. This was just full paid time off. And she never, even to the end, saw this as being a problem.
Wow, okay.
And on top of that, she was still accruing 26 weeks a year of vacation and sick time. Rizzo, meanwhile, in 2010, got 107 vacation days and 36 sick days that were worth about $386,786.
My.
And then there were the retirement benefits. The most egregious case here was with the police chief, Adams, who immediately upon being hired was declared disabled due to back, knee, and neck injuries taken in the line of duty.
Good hire. Good
Well,
hire.
normally that's the sort of thing you would declare that when you retire, because if you're declared disabled, when you're retired, you don't have to pay taxes on 50% of your pension.
Oh.
So to immediately come in and be like, I'm disabled, he must have had this plan all like, I'm going to do this, get this, and then when I retire, I don't have to pay taxes on it. But if he was disabled in that way, normally he would not have been considered fit for that particularly active job. And even though he claimed disability, he was still seen taking spinning classes and running 5Ks. But because of his claim, he was on track to receive $411,000 a year as his pension and lifetime medical care to himself and his dependents.
Wow.
Rizzo, meanwhile, was getting $48,996 into a deferred comp retirement account every year, and then $20,496 into a normal retirement account on top of that, and his pension was set to be between $650,000 to $880,000 a year when he retired. He also had a health care plan that covered 100% of his fees and would reimburse all of his co-pays. So taking into account all these perks and benefits, Rizzo was actually receiving around $1.5 million a year from the city of Bell.
That is insane. Those are insane numbers.
So certainly you must be thinking this is highly illegal. Like obviously illegal. Well, get a degree in government first and then come making your accusations to me, because a lot of this was actually sort of legal. It started in 2005 when Rizzo proposed to turn Bell into a charter city. At the time, they were a general law city, which meant that they had to follow state laws that restricted city council pay. But in a charter city, he could raise their pay so high that they wouldn't turn on him. Like he could keep paying the city council members so that they wouldn't rat him out. Rizzo, the rat him out. But they marketed it as giving the Bell government more local control. They left out the part where it exempt Bell employees from salary regulations. So LA itself is also a charter city. So their city council at the time was the highest paid in the United States. So no one's innocent, really. They were making more than the U.S. Congress was.
Oh, my God.
So that part of it's not entirely unheard of. And the saddest part here is that this was put to a public vote, but less than 400 citizens of Bell came out to vote. 54 voted against it, but 336 did. And that's less than 1% of the population. And that still allowed it to pass. So it passed, and the cap was blown off the salaries that they could be earning. But where'd they get all the money to pay for these bloated salaries in such a poor community? Why? From the poor community itself. That's where they got it from. Drain it from them. They cut several services around the city, and they laid off tons of workers.
Wow.
Employees from the Parks and Recreation Department, people who ran programs for children, they all got laid off. These people who were making minimum wage got laid off. Taxes were always a good source of revenue. Public service taxes on things like sewage and trash and recycling and lighting got nearly doubled to generate the money for all their salaries, and most of this without voter approval. Between 2007, which is when these rates went up, and 2009, an extra $4.7 million in revenue came in from these higher taxes, and they were not going to the services they were being levied for, which is, in fact, illegal. The average property tax in LA County was 1.16%. In Bell, it was 1.55, which put it among the highest in the country. The director of general services in Bell, Eric Agena, who was earning $421,402 during all this, but he never faced any charges. He would use his office to collect code violations and fines on small business owners, rarely getting the judge's approval that was needed to do this. He charged over 15 local businesses to pay huge fees for conditional permits and would make some of them guarantee that they would take in a certain amount of sales tax. And if they didn't take in as much as they predicted they would have to pay the difference to the city of Bell. And if you couldn't pay, you got to come talk to Rizzo. You got to renegotiate with him. One tire shop had to pay an extra $13,000 a year because they weren't taking in enough business, which makes complete sense.
Yeah.
An auto dealer had to guarantee the city $80,000 a year in sales tax.
That's extortion.
It was mafia law, and people
Yeah.
lost their businesses because of this. A good way to get a quick fix of cash was to go through bonds, like in 2003 when voters approved Measure A to get up to $70 million in bonds to build a sports and arts recreation complex.
Yeah.
As the years went on, the city had issued $50 million in bonds, but there were never any plans drawn up for any sort of complex. Another classic way of bringing in dirty money is to get the cops involved.
Beat people up and
take their wallets.
Yeah, take their wallets.
Give us your lunch money. It's the law. They set up crazy parking restrictions in residential areas so that basically anywhere you parked on the street, you would get a ticket. Rizzo encouraged the cops to bring in more revenue by going out and writing these tickets and arresting whoever they could. Like he encouraged them to do that. If the cops didn't feel right about doing this, he gave them the wonderfully vague threat of, hey, if we don't do this, we might not have a police department then.
Wow.
So the Bell Police Department responded by making a game out of it. They called it the Bell Police Department Baseball Game. Assault and batter up.
You don't want to find out what a bunt is.
Could I have a Dodger dog? You don't want that.
Everything's foul.
Dodge our dog.
Dodge our dogs.
Traffic violations and infractions were hits. A parking ticket or recovering stolen goods was a single.
Okay.
Doubles included misdemeanor or warrant arrest. Triples included impounding a car. And a home run was a felony arrest on an observation. Non-performers were sent for a minor league rehab stint.
Back to the bullpen.
The cops later claimed that this was just an office joke, but still, between 2008 and 2009 alone, they took in almost $1 million just in impound fees. Chief Adams reportedly went out once and impounded 15 cars in one day to show them how it was done.
Wow.
They would charge even more on impounds for drivers who were unlicensed. They were charging 3 times what it cost in the rest of LA. So there was a lot of money to be made there. So they'd purposely try to target drivers who seemed unlicensed, which meant people who looked especially Latino, which makes this a massive civil rights violation.
I call that racial profiling, as does everybody else.
And the unlicensed people paid it because they weren't licensed, because they were in the country illegally, and they didn't want to cause any more trouble and risk getting deported. So everyone was sort of deadlocked.
Yeah.
Now, to launder all these inflated salaries, which again were mostly legal, they had to fudge the books a little bit. Delicious, I bet. Rizzo liked that. To keep Adams' salary hidden, they split his employment into 2 contracts, one for police chief and one for special police counsel. So each one looked normal, but combined it was huge.
Okay.
So in the case of Rizzo and the council members, they had their regular salaries, but then they were on various different councils that had names like public financing, surplus property, solid waste and recycling. However, these sham boards, as they were called, would hold what they called phantom meetings, where they would just meet during their regularly scheduled council meetings, or when they did hold separate meetings for these groups, they would sometimes literally meet for 1 minute and then adjourn, and then each member would be paid thousands of dollars for that. So Rizzo had 5 separate contracts this way that would obscure prying eyes from figuring out exactly how much money he was making. To help them figure out how to get around all these inconvenient obstacles of law and morality, Rizzo and Spaccia worked with a Wells Fargo consultant in Tennessee named Alan Pennington to figure it all out. Another incriminating thing I forgot to mention was an email exchange between Spaccia and Adams when Spaccia sounds so weird. It can't be Spaccia.
SPECIA.
SPACCIA.
I have no idea.
You're under arrest. You had to trick me into saying CIA, and that's all I needed to arrest you. But I work for Russia now.
Comrade.
See you in Gulag. When Spaccia was still courting Adams to come work in Bell, in an email, Adams said, "I am looking forward to seeing you and taking all of Bell's money." To which Spaccia responded, "We will all get fat together. Pigs get fat, hogs get slaughtered. So long as we're not hogs, all is well."
That's
cartoonishly evil.
That's fat cat talk.
Hey, they are working for the Penguin. Hopefully they were just quoting Dick Tracy to each
Dick Tracy villain. That's just flat top talking.
But seriously, we're going to do a good job totally on the level.
On the level, yeah. No, everything's going to be on the book.
See you in hell.
Yeah.
Now, how to keep these charming people in office. The local 2009 election is probably the best example of how this was done. This election later got investigated by the FBI and the California Secretary of State office once the corruptions went public, and they noticed that it was an extremely low voting turnout, even by Bell standards, and that most of the voting was done absentee. But what was found to have happened was that up to 3 off-duty cops were going around with the mayor and one of the council members up for re-election, and they were going door to door to distribute absentee voting ballots and encourage the voters to vote for the people who were already in power. Then they would come back a few weeks later to pick up the ballots, which is very illegal, and they would allegedly only collect the ones who had voted for who they wanted to be in office, which is even more illegal.
That is one of the worst things I've heard.
One voter, well, there's more. One voter said that they had come to her door, made her fill out some stuff, even though she didn't do absentee voting. And then when she went to go vote in person on election day, they said, no, you already voted. Another guy said that they gave him an absentee ballot and then they'd come back to pick it up, but he voted for a different person than the one they told him to, and he had mailed it in. And when they came back a few weeks later to pick it up, they were furious to see what he had done, to see that he had followed the law.
Yeah, one, God forbid the other side get one vote.
Even stranger was that they found out that 19 of the people...
My knuckles. Sorry. I'm mad. Sorry.
They found out that 19 of the people who had cast votes were either dead or living in Lebanon. And that's not a euphemism.
That's not a euphemism for also being dead.
Apparently, this sort of thing happened in earlier elections as well. And just as a final piece of evidence against Rizzo, there's the matter of how he spent his dirty money. He decided to build himself a luxury home in Huntington Beach. And in 2004, he bought a 10-acre horse ranch in Washington where he kept about 30 purebred racing horses with names like Dépenser de l'argent, which in French means spending money.
They're going to take that horse in for evidence.
Who hired you?
Not talking, huh?
Bring in our interrogator. Mr. Ed? He speaks my language. He had gotten into this game by Bell's contract planning director who owned a horse racing business, and since the year 1995, the city of Bell had paid over $10.4 million to businesses owned by a Mr. Dennis Tarango. The invoices never specified exactly what that money was for, but it should be noted that Tarango was the business partner of Rizzo and his horse enterprise.
Oh, boy.
Rizzo even claimed over $770,000 in phony losses to the IRS over his horse business and his luxury home, which will come back to bite him very soon.
Bite him like a horse.
Bite him like a horse bites a carrot. Dangle the carrot in front of the horse. Carry the 4.
Running equals running.
We're the worst. LA District Attorney Steve Cooley, who headed the eventual court case, called this whole ordeal corruption on steroids. So that was the powder. They were also doing steroids, which is not a lot if you're working for the city government. So that was the powder keg. Oh, they also were in the MLB. Rizzo went on to become the home run king.
Rizzo is Mark McGuire, which is also an alliterative name, by the way. A lot of people know that.
Mark Fatso McGuire. So that was the powder keg that the LA Times article on July 15th, 2010 ignited.
Yeah.
But when it all came out, there was immediate uproar from the community, and there were protests, a lot of yelling. But Mayor Oscar Hernandez denounced the LA Times story and defended Rizzo's salary, saying that he saved the city from bankruptcy and he deserved every penny. Also saying, oh, he got paid in pennies.
Oh, by the way, thank you for the pennies that you guys have paid for all your non-parking tickets.
Because we pay you in pennies.
It's a vicious cycle of pennies. It's a copper cycle of pennies.
It's vicious, like a horse biting a carrot.
It's vicious, like the weight of pennies in your pocket having them carried to the city hall.
It's vicious, just like Rizzo going for some of that fudge I was talking about. Also saying that...
Go on about fudging the numbers.
Slowly and with vanilla. He also was saying that these employees didn't get any car or cell phone allowances, which was totally uncool, and that they had to pay out of pocket for those things. And even if that did justify it, which my cell phone bill is $700,000 a year, they still neglected to mention that they were getting reimbursed for those out-of-pocket charges by the city of Bell. Rizzo said about his salary that if that's a number people choke on, maybe I'm in the wrong business.
Yeah,
the first true thing he ever said. Spaccia said that I would have to argue you get what you pay for, and Mayor Hernandez says our city is one of the best in the area.
As they fire minimum wage workers. Yeah, right?
Is
that right?
As most of the businesses sell tires in the neighborhood.
We have one teacher for 2 schools.
And he also works at the tire shop. This was not a sentiment that the angry citizens of Bell agreed with. As one protester put it, if you're making that much money, it should be a better city.
There you go. Point made.
At the next city council meeting, 103 locals signed up to speak, each of them getting 3 minutes to yell and scream at the council. They were told repeatedly, I guess you could say about every 3 minutes, that they have to resign and leave the city or else go to prison in both English and Spanish.
I hope Lebanese was also a language.
As a result, the city council members voted to immediately cut their salaries down by 90% to what it should have been all along, as it was a part-time job, to $8,076 a year.
Imagine going from $700,000 to $8,000.
No, they were only They were only making 100,000.
Oh, okay, yeah.
But the public made itself heard finally, and within a week, Rizzo, Spaccia, and Adams all agreed to resign, while Mayor Hernandez and Vice Mayor / Council Member Teresa Jacobo decided to serve the rest of their terms for free and would not seek re-election.
Okay.
But this wasn't enough for the citizens or for the law enforcement who were now getting involved.
Yeah.
Within the next couple weeks, then California Attorney General Jerry Brown subpoenaed 60,000 pages of records from the Bell archives to see if criminal charges could be filed. Rizzo and Adams left office in August and Spaccia in September, but the guy they appointed as interim administrative officer, Pedro Carrillo, had worked with the corrupt city council, and it turned out that his firm had been getting paid over $100,000 a year by Bell for the past 2 years, so he was pressured to resign.
Yeah.
It still wasn't exactly clear if anything illegal had actually gone on yet at this point, but on September 21st, 2010, the attorneys decided it was illegal enough, and at around 10 a.m., police were sent out to arrest Rizzo, Spaccia, Mayor Hernandez, who had to have his front door smashed in with a battering ram because he wouldn't answer, Vice Mayor Jacobo, and then council members George Mirabel, who also ran a mortuary, Victor Bello, George Cole, and Luis Artiga, and they were all charged with misappropriation of public funds. They were referred to as the Bell Eight.
Cool.
Bell 8, 9.
Fudge.
Delicious. Wah, wah.
What?
The first of 3 audits of the city came a day later and found $29.3 million in questionable costs, and the public couldn't be happier. People gathered outside Bell City Hall to applaud and laugh at the politicians. One guy played Another One Bites the Dust with some speakers. But
I hope this was on a weekend when nobody had to go to work. Because if you guys
no
missed
one worked in Bell. That was the problem, that they had free time to do this. They put all their money together and bought a boombox so they could play Queen songs. But justice was not moving swiftly. The judge put in charge of this case was Kathleen Kennedy, not that one, of the LA County Superior Court.
My face.
I ordered you to justice in front of the Council of Jedi.
She keeps bringing that up, and I don't really know what it means.
You shall outrun the Indiana Jones boulder. It wasn't until February 7th, 2011 that the judge offered plea deals to the 8, but only 6 of them agreed to it, so that didn't work. They all had to agree.
Yeah.
But the people of Bell wanted to move on, and they needed a government to do that. So an organization called the Bell Association to Stop the Abuse, or BASTA, who were focused on getting full disclosure of administrative salaries and forming a committee of citizens to review and set salaries for the Bell government. They started collecting signatures to hold a recall election. To force this, they needed signatures from 25% of registered voters, which meant 4,000 people. They got it pretty quickly, and even they held a special ceremony for getting the 4,000th one. Fudge for everybody. So on March 8th, 2011, 33% of the citizens of Bell voted, some for the first time ever, which still 33, come on. Be angry. They voted to recall Mayor Hernandez, Vice Mayor Jacobo, and council members Mirabel and Artiga, even though Artiga had already resigned. Also recalled was Lorenzo Velez, who was the one member of the council who actually was not involved in any of this and was receiving a normal salary and got lumped in with the rest of them.
Jeez.
He got recalled. Imagine I was making $7,000.
Yeah.
All of you were making $100,000.
He was getting postcards from everyone else's vacations. He's like, you know what, when my day's gonna come, and it didn't.
They're pretty thrifty. Someday I'll be mayor. Mayor. I like the sound of that. That'll be the day, a Lebanese mayor. So the problem they ran into, this is such a weird story. The problem they ran into when they elected new people, though, was that the votes for new city council members had to be reviewed by the other members of the council, but the rest of the council was in jail, so there was nobody to review the votes. So you just protocol. So they had to sign what was known as Assembly Bill 93, which allowed the LA County Board of Supervisors to review the votes, and on April 7, 2011, the new city council was sworn in. As for the old council members, they pleaded not guilty, along with the mayor.
Great.
The 5 council members and the mayor the 6 of them were all tried together.
Okay.
Mayor Hernandez kept insisting that he was innocent. His is another weird part of this story, because he had come to the Central Valley of California from Mexico as a teenager, and then went on to work in Vernon for a while before he moved to Bell and bought a grocery store. He joined the city council in 2003 and worked his way up to mayor, but in court he kept saying that he only had a 6th grade education and insisting that he couldn't read or write English.
Okay.
He said that he would use a rubber stamp to sign things, and that Rizzo took advantage of that to just get him to sign whatever he wanted to without him understanding what he was signing.
Okay.
To this, the judge said, if you didn't have the ability and the skills to do the job, then you shouldn't have run for the job. The trial for these 6 finally began on January 24th, 2013, which is already 3 years after the article broke. And deliberations started on February 22nd, and even this couldn't go without any sort of controversy. One juror was noticed to be looking up information on coercion online and had been talking with a lawyer about it, and then started accusing the other jurors of coercion. This led to insults and harassment among the jurors, and one of them had to be replaced amid suspicions of bribery going on.
Wow.
So as a result of all this, some of the charges against the 6 had to be thrown out. But on March 20th, 2013, the sentences started coming in. It was a run-on sentence because there were so many of them. George Mirabel was found guilty on 5 counts and was sentenced to 1 year in jail, 5 years of probation, 1,000 hours of community service, and had to pay $242,293 in restitutions.
Wow.
Victor Bello was found guilty of 4 counts. He got the same thing as Mirabel, but only had to do 500 hours of community service and pay $177,600 in restitutions. His was a little lower because he had actually approached the DA's office about what was going on months before the story broke on May 9th, 2009, but they didn't even get back to him until 10 and a half months later. And he had also reportedly made complaints about it as far back as 2006. Vice Mayor Teresa Jacobo was found guilty on 5 counts. She got 2 years in prison and had to pay over $242,000 in restitutions. George Cole was only found guilty on 2 counts. He was in poor health, so he only got 180 days of home confinement, followed by 5 years of probation, 1,000 hours of community service, and $77,000 in restitutions. Mayor Hernandez was found guilty on 5 counts, had to serve 1 year in county jail, 5 years probation, 1,000 hours of service, and $241,000 in restitutions. He, along with Jacobo and Mirabel, were also ordered to stay 100 yards away from City Hall forever and to also play nice. Luis Artiga was cleared of all charges.
Okay.
He was a minister who had gotten put on the city council to fill a spot somebody had vacated mid-term, so he wasn't really involved in anything that was going on.
Right.
He just thought, well, this is a nice paycheck.
Who would have thunk it?
I don't see what's so hard about living in Bell. Hernandez, Jacobo, and Cole then sued the city of Bell to cover their legal expenses.
Where's the money going to come from?
And also, you're the ones on trial. The city isn't paying for your corruption trial. Now on to Rizzo and Spaccia. They were charged with misappropriating public funds, conflict of interest, and falsifying and secreting public documents. On October 23rd, 2013, Spaccia's trial begins for her 13 felony corruption charges. During the trial, she tried to paint herself as a victim of Rizzo. The judge wasn't buying it. She also tried to get a sympathy vote by crying a lot and saying how she had to support her elderly grandparents and her son who had been in a near-fatal car accident and her own personal health issues to deal with. To this, the judge visibly rolled her eyes. In December 20...
Did they have to put that in the, like a stenographer had to put that down?
Take note.
Take note, rolling my eyes.
Sigh. In December 2013, Spaccia was convicted on 11 felony counts. On April 10th, 2014, she was sentenced to 11 years and 8 months in prison and had to pay over $8 million in restitutions. The judge added, in reference to her email from years earlier with the police chief, that she had become a hog, not a pig. And so, and so now the day of reckoning is finally here. Her weapon is not the weapon I usually see in cases that come before me. It's not a gun. It's not a knife. It's the trust that people had in her. Oof. That hurts.
Yeah, I felt that. She's going to be thinking about that in her cold...
I'm pretty sure she's not. Chief Adams himself seems to have gotten off scot-free in all this, but he was used as a witness. And then on July 20th, 2012, he asked the state pension panel to double his pension to reflect the bloated pay he was receiving. He was rejected.
I hope
but
so.
Just the nerve, like, so...
Yeah.
Still,
so let's talk money.
So I know everyone else got caught, but I'm still here. And I want to be compensated for that.
I think I got one more check coming my way.
I'm here to get my last paycheck. Don't mind me. It's a little weird, but you remember me.
Your digits are all wrong. There's 6 numbers
I'm missing 8 zeros. So now on to justice for Ratzo. In preliminary hearings, he did not divulge exactly how he did what he did. He repeatedly pleaded the fifth serving, but he did let slip that the dirty deed started in his 13th year on the job. His plan seemed to have been to swindle the city for all he could get and then retire before anybody noticed.
Okay.
He tried to pin the blame on Spaccia and then the donkey, and then offered to help convict Spaccia to get some leniency for himself. He also fell asleep in court one day, and another day had to be rushed to the hospital for chest pains, and then he wanted to be reimbursed for all his legal fees.
What is wrong with him? What is money to this
They
guy?
they didn't get it. Like, they really didn't get it. On October 3rd, 2013, when the real trial started, Rizzo saw what he was up against and decided to just give up, and he pleaded no contest to the 69 criminal charges against him. Residents of Bell wanted him to get life in prison, but in mid-April 2014, he got slapped with the maximum sentence against him of 12 years in state prison, 3 years of parole, $8.8 million in restitution, and he was banned from ever holding public office again.
Decent.
He got the maximum sentence because, as the judge said, the craftiness with which the defendant committed the crime is amazing.
Yeah.
She compared him to the Godfather. All the things that happened were found to revolve around Rizzo. He was described as the Black Widow that created the web. For his part, Rizzo in court said, "I breached the public's confidence. I am very sorry for that." No, you weren't.
You're not coming off as sincere.
In February 2014, Rizzo also pleaded guilty to charges of tax fraud brought upon him by the federal government for those $700,000 worthy of phony deductions I mentioned earlier.
Oh, yeah.
So for that, he owed $256,000 to the IRS and was sentenced to 33 months in a federal prison, which he was allowed to serve concurrently. Starting May 30th, 2014, it was off to Prizzo for Rizzo. At this point, he could...
A joke he does not like.
Right. We can't make fun of his weight. We can't make fun of his punishment. At this point, he could be out in another 4 years with good behavior. And with that, the trial was over. It took 4 years, but Bell still had to cope with what had happened. Even though they had a new government, the people of Bell didn't much trust the replacements either. And it didn't help that they had to make even more budget cuts and layoffs to stabilize themselves after the scandal.
We were low before.
Yeah, well, we got to go a little lower. One of the audits had shown that about 4,000 residents had been overcharged $2.9 million in property taxes. So in September 2010, Assembly Bill 900 was signed to kill all the Jedi and return that, which is something Kathleen Kennedy ordered, and then return that money to the people, giving an average of $300 per person.
It's a nice check. Not nice
Not enough.
Yeah, but
The city also sued companies and people who had gotten money illegally from Rizzo. McCullough Construction Company, the company that had also built Rizzo's home, got sued for $3.2 million. They sued the National Steelworkers Old Timers Foundation because Councilman Cole had been running it, and they gotten paid $87,120 that it shouldn't have gotten in another major conflict of interest. Councilman Artiga, the one who didn't get charged, he got sued to give back $183,575 that he should not have gotten.
Okay.
Local businesses rejected the Bell Chamber of Commerce and formed their own citizen-run Bell Business Association. The new city manager, Doug Wilmore, managed to get them back on track, and they now have some $22 million in their reserve. The writers of the original LA Times article became local heroes, and in April 2011, the LA Times won the Pulitzer Prize for public service for this story.
Yes.
The whole thing became a national symbol for political greed.
Yeah.
It made unions and Democrats look bad and raised a lot of anti-government sentiments in California, but it also sparked a lot of reforms. Citizens and cities all over California started putting in requests to see the salaries of their local officials.
Which is good, yeah.
It was a template of how to fix things when it's found out that your local government is taking advantage of you. Prop 13 was made to take away the power of local officials from setting tax rates. There were two governors in charge during the duration of this case. Schwarzenegger called for the salary of top government officials to be posted online for everybody to see. Brown signed Assembly Bill 23, which made it so that city officials have to announce how much each member is making when holding simultaneous or back-to-back meetings. So like $50.
That sucks.
And let's talk about the pools. The saddest part is that Bell was so unassuming, like they were so innocent, and that made it so perfect for them to be taken advantage of. There was no local newspaper that could keep an eye on things. As the judge said, partial blame went to the local citizens for not voting on anything and not attending any public meetings ever. Once there was all the outcry, she said this wouldn't have happened if people were as interested then as they are now. But the crooks here knew nobody was paying attention and that a majority of the citizens didn't speak English enough or at all to be prepared to keep an eye on what was going on, and they took advantage of that.
Awesome.
Most of the residents either worked for the city or they got public aid or they were not legal citizens, so that paralyzed them from trying to rock the boat. And nobody within the government really wanted to stop it because they were all making money. The only reason most of them were sorry for this is because they got caught.
Definitely.
What's worse is that this sort of thing has happened before and the rules were changed to fix it, and then something like Bell happens where they found a way to step around those rules, so they changed the rules, and then someone's just going to find a way again, step around it and do it again. The more rules there are, the more complicated they get, and it makes it harder for the average person to keep track of what's going on, and that leads to more opportunities for crooked politicians to hide amongst the rules and take advantage. We can't prevent this, but we can keep an eye out, so take note from Bell when we enter the new 4 to 8 years of Rizzo Redux.
From that story, what you take is like, oh, you need to be more active in everything.
Pay attention.
You need to pay attention when like, why does he get a Ferrari?
And I only get a Maserati.